You may wonder how to properly set up your saddle on the Open Mind. It's actually not that hard. So in the package you'll find a couple of pieces that are key here. One is the C-tube top clamp with 2 set screws in the back and a pilot hole in the front. So the pilot hole in the front is to make sure you don't put too many spacers inside. So the pilot hole, through that hole you need to see carbon. If you see the spacers through the hole, you've put too many in. Now the number of spacers that we ship with it gets you exactly to the maximum that's allowed for the pilot hole. So normally you can't go wrong there unless you find some extra spacers from a friend who also has an open mind and you start to use those, you'll run into problems. We have 2 versions of this. This is the short version and we recommend you use that if you can. We also have a longer version, so that helps if you, for example, got the frame wrong, but really when you follow the instructions that won't happen, or if you change the saddle dramatically, or if you want to resell the bike, of course, after a while. Then the longer one gives you more adjustment. Instead of the 15 millimeters on this one, it gives you 35 millimeters. Now, the other pieces you will find, of course, there's the rail clamp. So it clamps on the top clamp and it clamps the rails. Note that there's one main rail clamp and then these side clamps. We have 2 separate sets of these side plates. One for 7 by 7 millimeter, say round rails, and one 7 by 9.6 for rectangular rails. Usually those are carbon rails that are oval or rectangular. So just make sure you use the side plates that match the rails that you have on your saddle. Then you'll also find a bunch of spacers. So we have 1 millimeter spacers, 3 2 millimeter spacers, and 1 8 millimeter spacers. And with that, you can cover the whole range from 0 to 15 millimeters height adjustment in 1 millimeter steps. So last but not least, there's a tiny little shim, and we know it's tiny and you might lose it, so we put 3 in the package, just like we put 4 set screws in the package. And this one goes inside the top clamp and it sits between the set screws and the carbon, so it protects the carbon. Always use this shim. If you manage to lose all 3, call us and we'll send you a couple more. Do not apply the set screws directly onto the carbon, of course. That's what this shim is for. Use a little dab of grease in the back when you put it in so that it sort of sticks to the clamp. It makes it much easier to install. Then for the other parts, as you start installing them, always use carbon assembly paste all on the inside of the top clamp. Use carbon assembly paste in between the spacers, and make sure that when you tighten the set clamps, you do it to a maximum of 3 Newton meters. So you need a torque clamp to do this properly and not cause any damage. So as you're installing it, you start with putting the saddle on your old bike, or it's already on your old bike probably. You measure the saddle height from the bottom bracket to the top of the saddle. I recommend making a mark there so you know exactly where you measured it to. And let's say your saddle height is 80 centimeters. Now you take that saddle, you install it on the top clamp as I just described, and then you can decide to put a couple of millimeters of spacers in if you want to make that as your standard so you have immediate height adjustability options, or you can install it with 0 spacers if you really want, if that's the way you want to ride and you know that's your fixed saddle height forever. So you do that, you install it on the Mind, and now you measure again from the bottom bracket to that mark you made on the saddle. And now, for example, that saddle height is 83 centimeters. So the difference between those two, 83 and 83 centimeters, that's the amount of seat mast you need to cut. So now you take the top clamp off, you measure down from the edge of the mast down those 3 centimeters, and that's your cut mark. Of course, you have to make sure you cut a little bit above that mark because your cut also has a thickness to it. So it's really the same as when you're cutting a steerer. And we recommend having it done by a professional, so you can also blame them if they do it wrong. You don't have to blame yourself. It's kind of nice. And always, measure twice, cut once. So that's really all there is to it. It's quite easy. Important to note is that there is this printout manual. It's just 2 pages. It comes in the box, but if you can't find it anymore, you can also download it. It has all the instructions about how much you can cut off the seat mast, and to call us if you find that the difference between that actual height you need and the height you find before cutting it is too big, or if you find that your seat mast is already too short. In all those cases, you probably have the wrong frame size and you need to give us a call and we'll fix it for you.